Execution is really being able to take that vision and operationalize it into a day-to-day, week-to-week cadence that sort of gets them the results they're looking for. If every decision has to be done by the founder, that's a problem. They have to trust their people to be able to do the things that they otherwise themselves would have done.
When a company depends on constant drive of one leader instead of structured processes and accountability, progress stalls and exhaustion sets in.
If you got 50 things you've got on your plate, focus on 3 that are really going to move the needle, and try and ignore the rest or try and defer the rest.
Hello everyone, this is Kripa Anand and welcome to the CanadianSME Small Business Podcast. Today we are unpacking why growth often breaks down at the execution level and how founders can replace burnout-driven effort with disciplined, repeatable systems that scale. Many business owners believe they need a new strategy to unlock the next level of success. Here's the truth. In most cases, the strategy is not the issue. The gap lies in execution. When a company depends on constant drive of one leader instead of structured processes and accountability, progress stalls and exhaustion sets in. Joining us today is Ted Creighton, Master Business and Executive Coach with FocalPoint. With an engineering degree from Queensland and an MBA from Wilfrid Laurier, Ted has led strategic planning and supply chain integration for global organizations such as Estee Lauder and British American Tobacco. Now, Ted applies that same operational discipline to help SME founders shift from doing everything themselves to leading with clarity, structure, and measurable results. So, before further ado, let's dive in. Ted, welcome to the podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here.
Now, Ted, you often say that growing businesses don't really have a strategy problem, right? They have an execution problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, where is the gap? Why do leaders overplan yet struggle to execute? And are there any specific habits that, create this momentum? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a good question because I think a lot of businesses believe that strategy is the important part, but execution is just something that will naturally fall out of it. What I found especially with the clients I've had over the years, is that strategy is great, but execution is gold.
Yep.
And execution is really being able to take that vision and take sort of, what they want to do and then be able to operationalize it into a day-to-day, week-to-week cadence that sort of gets them the results they're looking for. And oftentimes what happens is that in taking it from strategy to execution, they just try and do everything all at the same time, and everybody gets confused and everybody starts to go off in a whole bunch of different directions.
Right.
So to give you an example, I've had a client in the past where they were convinced they needed a new strategy. Like in their mind, strategy was not working. They weren't getting the results they were looking for. But they also had 27 high priority items they were working on at any given time. So I said, what if this isn't really a strategy problem, but more let's get focused on the critical things that you need to do. Those 3 things you really should focus on to actually do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis and see if you get the results doing that. And lo and behold, after a number of weeks of doing that, they realized by focusing on, I'm a big fan of the 80-20 rule, but the trivial few things that are going to give you the most results, they were able to move the needle quite successfully without changing the strategy at all.
Wow, it's, a powerful insight that more strategy is often just a distraction in a way, from the harder work of consistent execution. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ted. Now let's focus on the, founder hero mindset that can, become a growth bottleneck, so to say. So how can founders spot over dependence on themselves and build repeatable systems? Because as an entrepreneur, you want to get into all the shoes yourself and do every task yourself. So how do you get out of that rut?
Well, and let's take a step back for a second. The typical founder, the typical entrepreneur is a very action-oriented, I do things my way, I develop the relationships type of person. So that the way they think as they grow the business has got to change, because if they don't, if they try and be the center of everything, they want to be the hero that makes a diving catch every time. They want to be the person involved in every decision. Once you start adding people and you start adding more processing, you start adding more complexity, they can't do that. So I think first and foremost is just getting founders especially to come to that realization that they have to change, that they have to trust their people to be able to do the things that they otherwise themselves would have done.
Yeah.
But as importantly, recognize that the signs that they're looking for is if every decision has to be done by the founder, that's a problem. If the founder feels they can't take a vacation or time off because they can't leave the kids minding the store, that's a problem as well. So I think once they come to that realization, then the question isn't a question of should I delegate or should I, defer responsibility. It's just a question of how and when. And oftentimes the choice is just one of trust.
Yep.
And it's, do I trust these people well enough so that I can give them the accountability and then follow up with them afterwards to make sure that they get it done? Because they're never going to do it as well as the founder does. But as long as, and my rule is usually, as long as they're doing it 80 to 90% as well as, that's a coachable moment that you can look for improvement going forward.
That's very well articulated. As a founder, moving from rescuing to systemizing is clearly the only way a leader can reclaim their time and, allow the business to scale as well.
Yes. If you can't, I often say that especially as you add more people, the complexity doesn't go up linearly, it goes up exponentially.
Yep.
And so unless you have clear processes, unless you have systems, unless you have people that are accountable for certain aspects of the business, there's no way that you're going to be able to keep your hands on top of everything. And so getting that realization that, having standardized processes and procedures, it isn't sexy and cool,
right,
but it's absolutely necessary if you're looking to scale a business, but probably just so that you give yourself some breathing room too.
No, definitely. I completely agree with you. And Ted, specifically with now AI coming into the picture, the game has changed, right? To all the founders watching, if you're the only one who can solve a client crisis or approve a deal, you don't own a business. You own a very high-stress job. In 2026, the cost of heroics is your health and your company's future. Stop being the bottleneck. Start building a weekly operating rhythm where your team owns the numbers so you can finally focus on the strategy you've been too busy to implement. Attention shifts now to AI, using AI, thoughtfully, only after strong processes are in place, right? And not just doing it mindlessly. So what problems, in your perspective, does AI actually solve? And why do you think can it not fix the broken processes?
Well, it's the old adage that garbage in equals garbage out. And if you don't have really robust processes, AI is not really going to be able to fix it that easily. What I find a lot of times is that people get really enamored with that shiny object. So they get enamored with this idea that, well, AI is going to do something for me, so I'll see what I can do to make it work for me.
Yeah.
Without thinking about what is the business case for AI? Like, what do I want it to do? It's really good to make sure that, certain things are done more efficiently. So, things like proposals or anything that's research intensive work, AI is really good at. So it sort of, brings the cycle time down on getting information processed. Taking any amount of data and then pulling the nuggets out of that data to make some decisions is a great thing as well. But I think there's got to be a business case around it. And the things to do to set things up so that AI be successful is really start slowly, like start with something that's easy to sort of get your head around it. But I think as importantly, put the processes and procedures in place and and clean up the data so that when you actually incorporate AI, then it's going to give you what you want. Because I found dealing with some clients, AI is a great way to enhance your bottom line, to give you better speed to market, give you some really good insightful information about your customers. But you've got to do all the pre-work to do that. And I don't think people necessarily understand that fully, that, it's not just let's bring in ChatGPT and life is going to be that much better. There's a bit more involved in actually getting that done.
No, definitely. AI is definitely a powerful accelerator. But as you said, it only accelerates what you already have, right? It's not a magic tool. If you have a bad process, it's just going to push that forward. So that's a great insight. All right, we're going for a short break right here, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll unpack how strong systems create real accountability without micromanagement. Stay tuned.
Hey, you think you know UPS? Yeah, that's us. Everybody knows that. You know what you didn't know? This. Okay, try to keep up. Ocean, us. Ground, rail, air, so us. Guess who? Us. Customs cleared, borders cleared, done. Us. You still with me? Wait for it. Boom. Us. Intelligent, automated, fulfillment. Us. Yep. Healthcare too. Digital your thing? Yeah. Well, book it, ship it, track it. You feeling me yet? Yep. That's all us. That's all UPS.
Welcome back, listeners. Let's dive into what healthy accountability actually looks like and what leaders can let go without losing control. Now, let's look at why building systems enable scale without sacrificing the quality aspect of it. So, Ted, what does healthy accountability look like, and how do leaders lead with confidence?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And I think, like I said before, one of the key things is healthy accountability is making sure that there's always somebody responsible for something.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, and I always use this example of, oftentimes people are really busy doing stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of what are they actually accountable for? And usually you're accountable for end results. You're usually accountable for metrics or measures or, or end goals. And so it's making sure that people understand that you're responsible for this outcome. I want to make sure you understand how you're going to get there. So there's a coachable moment there to make sure people understand, if you're starting today, how am I going to make sure that I actually achieve that, that goal or fulfill that metric? But then the other part of it is just making sure that people understand that on a regular basis, we'll be checking in, and we won't be talking about activity. We're going to be talking about what are the results that you're actually seeing, and then talking through, are you on track? Are you off track? If you're off track, what's the plan? So from the founder's point of view, it's really important for them not to be jumping in and getting involved in everything, because that's their natural, the natural way they're going to deal with things is, well, if you don't know the answer, I do, and I'll tell you. They have to become almost the coach. So they almost have to ask the good questions in terms of, okay, you're off track on this. What support do you need? What tools do you need? What's your plan going forward, so that there's ownership there? And I think that's healthy accountability, because you're setting people up for success, but you're letting them make a lot of the decisions, good, bad, or in between.
Right.
And be willing to let them fail a little bit sometimes and learn from their mistakes. I mean, that's just, that's the only way to learn.
That's a great advice, because true control, comes from having a system that report backs to you, not from doing each and everything yourself. So thank you so much for giving us that reminder. Now, looking ahead, the conversation moves to your new community built to support, advisor success.
Yes.
So, please go ahead and share about what is all that about. Why do you think there was the need for this? Where did you see that gap? And what exactly is the goal of the new network? How does it build that operational discipline in your view?
Yeah, thanks for asking, because it's a bit of a labor of love in that we realize this particular group is focused exclusively on financial advisors, especially financial advisors that are new, or relatively new in the business. Because as you might know, and the statistics usually show that a lot of people that get into business in general, but advisors specifically, in that first 5 years, about 70% of them decide this isn't for me.
Yep.
And mostly because of the fact that they just found that it's a lot more work than they thought. They're not getting the traction they thought. They're not necessarily getting the results, as quickly as they would have expected.
Yep.
So what we're trying to do is for those kinds of advisors is to shorten that cycle time and give them the tools that they need to be much more successful a lot more quickly. And also get them, just like we were just talking about with founders, get them to be more focused. They don't have to do 10 things at the same time well. They have to do 3 or 4 things consistently and do them well and talk about how they're doing about it. So what we like to do is to get a group of advisors together and share best practices, share wins, make sure that they understand, they've got metrics that they're accountable for, and, get some feedback on what's working, what's not working, what they can do differently. And what we want to do with it is we want to have it be something where it becomes kind of an industry standard thing, because, everybody, and I'm going to generalize a little bit, but every small business owner, when they get started, needs that kind of help.
Yes.
And I think advisors, are no different from anybody else.
Well, that's again so true. Helping advisors build more predictable, scalable businesses is a fantastic way to strengthen the entire SME ecosystem, specifically in the GTA area. It has been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. I'm loving this conversation, and definitely we're going to invite you one more time. But before we let you go, what is that one piece of advice that you would give to founders who get overwhelmed, by their rapid growth?
Yeah, this is going to sound a little counterintuitive, but I said it a little bit earlier in that, if you got 50 things you've got on your plate, focus on 3. Try and bring it down to what are the 2, 3 things that are really going to move the needle.
Yep.
And try and ignore the rest, or try and defer the rest, or try and not focus on the rest of the things. Because if you focus on the really, really important things, the other things will fall in place afterwards.
That's a golden advice. Cutting through the noise to find those few critical priorities is a game changer. Again, thank you so much for doing this, Ted. It was such a pleasure having you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, that was Ted Creighton from FocalPoint Business Coaching, a masterclass in how to move from being the bottleneck of your business to being the architect of its growth. To all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning into the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and visit CanadianSME.ca for more such resources. A very special thank you to our podcast partners, UPS, A1 Global College, Google, and ADP for their ongoing commitment to empowering small businesses across Canada. Keep shining. Kripa Anand signing off.